Hello and welcome back to the NJCAA Network for another episode of NJCAA All Access. It's Thursday, November 9th, and this year is flying by, a little more than 50 days away from the new year. I'm Zach McKinstry.
And I'm Alexa Wesselman, and it is busy all across the NJCAA as championships are going on. D3 soccer has already started, D3 volleyball is about to start, and over the next week and a half, all of our fall sports will be in championships.
Yeah, and we've got football conference playoffs coming up as well, with the 4 national playoff spots still up for grabs. So a lot to be determined and a lot happening last weekend on our junior college football scoreboard. We had 2 ranked win-in-your-in games on Thursday, with number 6 Mississippi Gulf Coast battling number 10 Jones, and number 13 Northeast Mississippi taking on the 15th ranked Rangers, with the final MACCC playoff spot in their respective divisions on the line. First in Senatobia, it took a late 14-point rally and an overtime effort to keep Northwest Mississippi's season alive, but thanks to Keegan Patterson's stellar passing, the Rangers survived and advanced. After a Chris McMillian TD pushed it to 14-0 with under a minute remaining in the third, Patterson connected with Kyler Hutton for an 81-yard score on the first play of the ensuing drive, and that was the spark that Northwest needed. They would add 2 more fourth-quarter touchdowns, including this 34-yard pass to Janoris Hobson to tie it up and send it to overtime. Demarion Pertite started the scoring in the extra frame on a 7-yard TD run, and then things flipped to the Rangers' defense. A Jaden Robinson rushing touchdown put it a PAT away from a second overtime, but Northeast went for 2 and the win, putting it in the hands of their top running back, Chris McMillian, but he was stuffed short to give Northwest the upset victory in their 10th straight MACCC playoff berth. Then in Ellisville, Mississippi Gulf Coast shut out number 10 Jones to make it 5 straight MACCC South titles for the Bulldogs. Jamari Thompson had the only 2 touchdowns for either side on a 49-yard rush and this 34-yard reception from Eli Anderson, and the Regulators' defense combined for 6 sacks and 11 tackles for loss in the win. Number 5 Copiah Lincoln and number 8 East Mississippi both won their matchups, rounding out the 4 teams that will fight for an MACCC title starting on Saturday, and more on that coming up with Alexa. Last Saturday, number 4 Snow kept their national playoff hopes alive by the skin of their teeth, sneaking past Garden City on a late fourth-quarter touchdown. Both sides had a massive second quarter, combining for 39 points, and rushing touchdowns in the third quarter from Jalen Daniels and Fred Davis put the Broncbusters ahead by 11. But Snow quarterback Donovan Smith proved that he is him, rallying in the third quarter and then putting together a 7-play, 66-yard game-winning drive, capped off by a 12-yard touchdown to Jared Wilson to seal it 33-32. Number 14 Lackawanna needed double overtime against Monroe College, but ultimately snagged the win on a Jalen Joyner touchdown and this Hamas Duran 2-point conversion, 38-36 the final. And Division III number 1 DuPage beat a ranked Division I team in Georgia Military at home for an interdivisional ranked upset. Number 2 Iowa Western got a rematch against Coffeyville, who ended their undefeated season last year, but the Reavers would shake off a slow start and squeak out a win 20-17. Hunter Watson did his thing, throwing for 164 yards. But it was the Iowa Western rushing attack that led the way, totaling more than 200 rush yards, 133 of which from Jonathan Humple, and Sean Gary picked up the lone rushing touchdown in the win. Hutch stays perfect with a win over Indy, and number 9 Dodge City tackled the Butler Grizzlies in our ESPN Plus Game of the Week. And in Texas, number 3 Kilgore beat Blinn, setting up an intriguing first-round playoff matchup in the Southwest Junior College Football Conference with New Mexico Military. And the wheels have fallen off the bus completely for number 12 Tyler, who dropped their 4th game of the year in a 10-point loss to Navarro at home. And lastly, in Division III, number 2 Rochester CTC were crowned champs of the MCAC with their 2nd win of the season over number 3 North Dakota SCS. A late fourth quarter score by Raphael Manning all but ended it for the Yellow Jackets, who haven't lost since September. And Nassau upset number 5 Lewisburg, and Hudson Valley and Hawking were beat by non-NJCAA institutions to round out Division III. It's a make-or-break weekend in NJCAA football coming up on Saturday, and Alexa's got a couple of big football matchups as well as some very interesting basketball matchups coming your way starting on Friday.
Well, we've got less overall top matchups coming up because most fall sports are in championships, but we still have football. Let's start with D1. Number 2, Iowa Western versus number 1, Hutchinson. This is the final week of the season, and this is the rematch we've all been waiting for. Obviously, Iowa Western won this meeting in last year's national championship game, but could this game be a preview of the national championship game again? I'm very curious to see what Coach Aaron Arnold has to say about this one. I know he's been waiting for it. Continuing in D1 football, number 6 Mississippi Gulf Coast versus number 8 East Mississippi. This is the MACCC semifinal game. We've seen a lot of changes happen in this region, so it'll be fun to watch who comes out on top and how that impacts our national playoff picture. And we finally get to feature some basketball. In D1, we've got number 24 Lee versus number 2 South Plains. Basketball season has started, and there are some really good games coming up already. And although this is just the beginning of the season, and a lot of games are left to be played, but there are high expectations for South Plains after not making the national tournament last year. And more basketball, but in women's. Number 11 McLennan versus number 2 Trinity Valley. A good early matchup on the women's basketball side against two teams that obviously want to repeat their success from last year. And now that basketball is in full swing, if you want a little more knowledge into which teams and players you need to be paying attention to, we have the answer for you. For men's, our basketball show JUCO Jam aired this week. Season 2 kicked off, and Brandon and Nick had a lot to say, so you'll want to check that one out. And also, we just launched our own women's show. We featured them previously on All Access, but first episode aired. Kenya and Dan have so much insight into JUCO women's basketball, so NJCAA Hot Hoops, and they'll give you what you need to know. You can watch both of those episodes right now over on the NJCAA network or head to the NJCAA YouTube page. We're going to take a break, but after that, Coach Aaron Arnold is here to give us his takes on the D1 football playoff picture.
Intensity fuels these champion student athletes to greatness. Zurich Insurance is proud to be the official provider of student athlete insurance for the National Junior College Athletic Association. Throughout the highs, we cheer along to their screams of victory. Throughout the lows, we support them through their tears of defeat. Zurich Insurance, helping student athletes play the sport they love.
I have a little birthday message for you from someone too.
I heard you really love basketball. You're a good shooter and a good dribbler. Happy birthday, MJ, and I hope you enjoy your day.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Welcome back to NJCAA All Access. All right, Coach Aaron is bursting at the seams with information to talk about in our D1 football segment. So let's just get right to him, and he's got to tell you everything that he has an opinion on this week.
Thanks, Alexa. We are here with Aaron Arnold, and we have been waiting for this conversation all year long. We talked about it at the start of the season. We alluded to it all year long across the schedule of both of these teams. But it's a number 1, number 2 matchup coming up this weekend with number 1 Hutch undefeated against another undefeated number 2 Iowa Western. Maybe a little bit of overlooking last week. They scraped by Coffeyville 20-17 in a close one. But regardless, rematch of the national championship, number 1, number 2. This is the most anticipated regular season matchup since when, in your opinion?
That's a good question. You know, you think about the number of times that it just happens to work out that number 1 plays number 2 in the regular season. It's a rare occurrence. Just mathematically, it just doesn't happen. The odds that we're into the last game in the season and there are 2 unbeaten teams that happen to be ranked 1 and 2, and they just happen to be on each other's schedule. I don't know. I hope some people could chime in on Twitter and share if they have that data, because I want to hear when it was. When I was at Garden City playing in the late 90s, We played Butler 4 times over a 2-year stretch. Those were always the top 2 teams in the country. Always major national title implications for all 4 of those games. And I think only once out of that 4 times where we actually ranked 1 and 2 when we played each other. And again, we're talking about, 25 years ago now. So I'm sure it's happened, once or twice in between then, but it just doesn't happen very often. So hopefully someone can chime in on Twitter and share that with us. Hard to find the right word to explain how big this game is. It is a massive, massive football game. What I see out of this matchup is 2 evenly matched teams, maybe the 2 most evenly matched teams that we've seen play all year. They're 2 very well coached teams. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't do much stupid stuff. They don't beat themselves. I think trying to find who's got an advantage in this game, I'd have to maybe give Hutch a slight edge just because they're at home. I think the key to the game is going to be, does someone make some mistakes? And if they do, can the other team capitalize on those? Is there going to be an interception, a pick 6, a blocked kick? Maybe someone scores on a punt return. Something like that to blow the game open and gain some momentum. Otherwise, man, I just see it being back and forth, big-time slugfest. I would not bet this game. But if I had to, I would say I'll give the edge to Hutch just because they're the home team. But this thing may be going to overtime.
Oh, yeah. If you wanted to add any more bulletin board material to that game, again, Hutch was shut out 31-0 in the national championship last year against Iowa Western. And they are angry. They will have circled this game for weeks and weeks and weeks, ready to play it. So Saturday is going to be a fun one. That one is at 2 p.m. Eastern in Hutchinson, Kansas. And then you move to Mississippi, and it is semifinal Saturday in the MACCC with 2 really intriguing matchups. First off, you got number 4 Copiah Lincoln against number 10 Northwest, a 2-loss Northwest team that's kind of come out of nowhere. They won in overtime last week, and they're in the mix if they can win out the MACCC. That game, and then number 8 EMCC against number 6 Mississippi Gulf Coast, 2 top 10 ranked matchups. Which one is more appealing to you?
Man, big time football in Mississippi. The question's tough. I feel like I have to pick my favorite kid, and I can't do that. I think both of those games just look amazing. So excited to see what happens in both of those. I guess maybe the game that's a little bit more intriguing to me is going to be that Gulf Coast East Mississippi game. Gulf Coast, at one point I thought Gulf Coast may have been the best team in the country. They still may be, but they've just been a little inconsistent. So I'll be curious to see which Gulf Coast team shows up. If they put it all together, I think they should win, but man, East Mississippi can come out there and play loose. They've got nothing to lose. They're going to be loaded for bear. They're certainly not scared to play in the game, and I think they're a really dangerous team. Anything can happen in both of those games, and they're both going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, that quarterback matchup of Ty Keys and Eli Anderson. Eli Anderson, a former EMCC quarterback, transferred to Mississippi Gulf Coast this year, and the matchup earlier this year was good. This one is going to be great. Another Saturday matchup. And lastly, we move into rankings. You get your wish. Snow drops out of the top 4, leapfrogged by Copiah Lincoln. So we'll see how the MACCC plays out to see who gets that 4th spot if it turns out to be that way. But with Snow dropping, what were your overall thoughts on the rankings?
I felt like it was the best poll of the season. I don't know that it's perfect, but I think they got it as close as they could have gotten it. I like where everybody sits right now. Obviously anything can happen over the next 2 weeks. There's still a lot of top 10 teams playing each other. And so the result of that is that you're going to see some top 10 teams get beat. I think the one thing that I feel confident about is that the Hutch-Iowa Western game probably won't shake things up a whole lot. If that game is close, the winner goes to number 1 and the loser goes to either 2 or 3. I think that's the way it should go, just to make sure they don't match up in the first round of the playoffs again. The Mississippi playoff games are going to shake out the remaining top 8, plus you got Kilgore taking on New Mexico Military. So there's a handful of really interesting games. The one thing I hope that we do with the polling is that we don't punish these teams who are playing in the playoffs right now. I don't think you should get hurt because you go take on, the number 6 team in the country. That shouldn't really hurt your rankings while other people are sitting on the sidelines. And so I hope we do a good job with that. But, at the end of the day, those guys control their own destiny. If you want to make the playoffs, you need to win. And you need to win your league. And I think if Kilgore can go win their league, whoever wins the Mississippi League, those teams deserve to get into the playoffs. And it looks like we've got the voting set up where that can happen. I think that the matchups this week, the games that we have, in my opinion, it's the most exciting week of junior college football that we've had yet. I don't think we've had more quality matchups than what you're going to see throughout the remaining weekend. And man, I couldn't be more excited to watch some good JUCO football.
I do not envy the jobs of the poll makers after this weekend. The whole top 8 could be shaken up. Snow dropping out after a close win over Garden City, your alma mater. And yeah, that whole top 8 could just be completely different when we talk again next week. So thanks again for your insight. I'm excited to talk to you on the following Tuesday because we're going to have a lot of changes to talk about. So thank you, Aaron, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys. See you next week.
Thanks, Coach Aaron, as always, for stopping by and giving us a little bit of your insight. We're going to take another break, but after that, Zach's going to dive deeper into our championship games going on and how spread out across the country they are.
The future is threatened by enemies often unseen and unexpected. In the midst of an uncertain and evolving world, the need for Marines to defeat these shifting threats is critical because the need to ensure stability for our nation has never been greater. When there are battles to win for America's future, there is one constant: Marines.
Welcome back to NJCAA All Access. With championships in full swing over the next week and a half, we wanted to give you a broad picture of how spread out our championships are across the country and how many states and areas the NJCAA is represented in.
With over 500 member institutions and 24 regions across the NJCAA, there's junior college action going on throughout the country. With fall championships coming up, we thought we'd give you a tour of the 9 national tournaments this season, starting with D3 soccer in Gastonia. You can listen to me broadcasting right now on the NJCAA network as Division III men's and women's soccer continues today, tomorrow, and Sunday at Caramount Health Park. D2 soccer is on the opposite side of the country at Keno Sports Complex in Tucson, Arizona, from the 12th to the 18th on the network. And D1 soccer is the same week in Wichita, Kansas on the NJCAA network with the semifinals and finals on ESPN+. Division III and Division II volleyball are a hair northeast in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Division III starting today and Division II beginning on the 15th. And Division I volleyball is back in Hutchinson, Kansas from the 15th to the 18th with the final day on ESPN+. Then to the Great Lakes, Division III football is on the campus of the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. That game will be the 2nd of December and available on ESPN+. And D1 football heads south to Little Rock, Arkansas and War Memorial Stadium on December 13th, and that one will be televised on ESPNU. Lastly, Division I cross country is a few states over in Huntsville, Alabama on November the 11th. With those championships continuing over the next couple of weeks, we'll have plenty of highlights to share with you guys on our social media at NJCAA Network. But for now, we have plenty of highlights from the last week to share with you on this edition of Junior College Gyms. We start in Mississippi where it ain't summer, but you'd think it was a public pool with all the players diving at Raymond Blackman as he makes 4 Mississippi Delta defenders miss and throws in one heck of a spin move on a thrilling touchdown for EMCC. This young man can move as he stops and starts, breaks outside, and then breaks some ankles. East Mississippi demolished Delta 52-6. In our ESPN Plus game of the week, it's number 9 Dodge City, fired up to play on the national stage, and what better way to kick it off than on the kickoff. Edward Wilson moving like a Maserati as he races into the end zone to give the Conquistadors the lead just 14 seconds into the game. Then, a few hours later, it was one of the top wide receivers, Javon Campbell, who would add to the highlight reel, blowing past the corner and reeling in this nasty one-handed catch to add to the lead. This would be one of 4 catches for 80 yards for Campbell in the 31-10 win over the Butler Grizzlies. In the Midwest District Championship, it was a failed clearance that resulted in this shot by Iowa Western and that save by Harvey Sellers of Indian Hills. Sellers would go on to keep the clean sheet with a couple of big saves, and the Warriors advanced to the Nationals for just the second time in their history in the 2-0 win over the Reavers. And lastly, who said punters aren't athletes? Two-way player Colbin Miller fakes the punt and goes sideline to sideline, weaving through a sea of white jerseys, somehow staying on his feet and sneaking into the end zone for 6 in the Tritons' big win over Highland. What a play by the punter in the huge win. Iowa Central ended up putting up 41 points and got the W to close out our junior college gyms.
Another week of showcasing some of our best student athletes in the NJCAA, and it's really cool to see how spread out the NJCAA is across our country with championships and how many regions are represented.
Yeah, all over the United States. So good to see those championships going on. 9 fall championships going on through the start of December. So be sure to tune into those. And that is all we got for you today on NJCAA All Access. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.